Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm Evan Mulch with United Patriots Alliance. On Saturday, the South Carolina GOP state convention was a total disaster. Sarah Grace Allen shared her thoughts shortly after enduring the madness in an article titled SCGOP Call to a Convention, Bread and Circuses. The article received a lot of attention. She later wrote a follow up article titled The SCGOP's House of Cards that went even further into digging into what happened on Saturday. In the first article, Sarah Grace wrote how it became increasingly clear to patriots that the agenda of the convention was not truly about closing the primaries as attendees were told. The convention's actual agenda was to consolidate control for the leadership of the South Carolina Republican Party so that they, the established leaders, can more easily pick the winners and losers, as if they already can't do that, right? With us right now is Sarah Grace Allen and Preston Baines. They're both leaders in SC Confidential, and they are going to share their thoughts on what happened at this year's South Carolina State Convention. Thank you, Sarah Grace and Preston, for joining. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having us.
Awesome. Great to be here.
Yeah, well, let's start with what exactly did happen at this year's South Carolina GOP convention.
Where do we begin? Well, I will say that it was interesting for me because last year's state convention was my first. And immediately off the bat, I just noticed how chaotic it was and unprofessionally run. And I remember sitting there thinking to myself, is this how it's always done? Because they were letting, alternates in the back be part of voice votes and all sorts. I've learned even more since then just how many rules that the leadership breaks during these meetings, and this special called convention was no different.
Right. So you produced two articles. Your latest article actually goes into detail on how delegates were allowed to be credentialed against the SCGOP rules in order to pass a new rule that limits who can work their way up in leadership in each Republican primary. So it limits who actually can participate in getting elected. So how foolish is
Exactly.
that at the state convention the rules aren't obeyed, but they're
Right.
actually using people who shouldn't be credentialed in order to safegate the current establishment inside the
Right.
SCGOP.
Exactly. And that's one of the points I make in my article. According to the rules, first of all, delegates who are voting at convention have to be elected. And to be even qualified to be a delegate, you have to have voted in the last 2 out of 3 primaries. But at the special called state convention, they were allowing people to be credentialed for simply having voted in the 2024 primary. So the very people they were allowing to make this 2 out of 3 candidate qualifications rule were less qualified than the candidates that they're trying to control. So the irony is hard to miss there. So
Absolutely. I just can't believe so many people fall for it. Why do you think? I mean, to me, it seems like Groundhog Day every time there's a South Carolina GOP convention. We continuously have we have a lot of people who are wet behind the ears. They go and they expect the leadership to be honorable and actually run a good convention, and it never happens. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Evan, right off the bat, talking about using this 2024 primary as a qualification to be able to be a delegate, right off the bat, that was a law that expired in 2010. And they're citing that as a law that they are using to credential delegates. So, right off the bat, that's being untruthful. And actually, the convention president himself cited this in front of the entire body. That really calls into question the credibility of the proceedings from thereafter.
Right. So, I mean, the GOP of South Carolina, just like every GOP across the United States, because every state has its own GOP, they're private clubs, right? I mean, they don't obey their own rules.
right, and that's where they get you is because, those of us who are following the rules and paying attention with what's going on, we see them being broken left and right. And then when we start, saying there needs to be some kind of recourse, that's when they pull the, oh, well, we're a private club, so we can do whatever we want. It's very sly how they operate.
However, there is something people need to know, and it's that the precinct reorganization and the convention process and all of that is actually a statutory thing via South Carolina law. So it's not, when they use the private club card, it's not quite that simple.
Right.
So you're saying it's a public-private partnership type of thing?
Yes, because there are certain rules that are being broken that aren't just SCGOP rules, they're actually state law in how these conventions are supposed to be run. For example, the specific law that delegates are to be elected and not selected by anyone. Also, the convention proceedings, certain ways in which that was handled were in direct violation of actual state law.
Interesting. Well, you wrote in your second article, Sarah Grace, you wrote about specific people that sort of participated in the shenanigans. Please talk about that because I think not every county deals with that. I mean, you have more conservative counties, or I guess more conservative control counties. I think there's probably two or three in the state. Maybe there's more that probably just went to the max and went as conservative as possible. But counties like yours, it looks like you've got, Drew McKissick's minions sort of safeguarding Drew McKissick because of people like you who are wanting to move forward with as much truth as possible.
Right. Well, it kind of all began during our county reorg when we were, because at that point, Preston and myself and several other good patriots were a part of the steering committee of our party leadership. And we were starting to notice some really shady things going down. Conversations were being had with Drew, which weren't shared with us. We were starting to ask questions about different procedures and processes, and we were being left unanswered. At every point during that process, we were attempting to handle it within the leadership. They'd like to try to make us, they being, the Drew crew is what they're affectionately known across the state, is Drew and his, supporters like to make truth loving conservatives out to be just divisive people for the sake of being divisive. But when we were dealing with these shady dealings while we were on, part of the leadership team, we were trying our best to handle it as internally as possible and to ask these questions and to have conversations with our chairman, with our first vice chair, et cetera, kind of saying, what's going on, guys? This is not really lining up. And at every turn, we were ignored. And then that's when the deeper we dug, the more we were finding out about what we call delegate harvesting, where, there's a process with how delegates are supposed to be elected. And they were allowing delegates to just sign up. And we've had several people report to us that, yeah, they didn't know they were breaking the rules, but our leadership was just letting them, oh, hey, meet me in this parking lot and sign this form and you can be a delegate.
It's sort of a secretive sign up too, right? Where the leadership that had this
100%.
authority.
That's the key. Right. That's the key because your delegates are supposed to be elected at the precinct level at either reorg or the makeup meeting. All the counties have, if not everyone's able to attend reorg, they'll have, usually like about a week later, a makeup meeting so that people can come and, be part of the precinct reorganization process. And after both reorg and the makeup meeting at one of the steering meetings, we found out that they had been secretly signing people up for a solid 13 days, I think, was after the makeup meeting was when we found out.
Yeah, and if when we had a steering meeting, if the questions were not asked about had this been going on, because we started to learn of some rumblings about it. Who knows when we would have found out about it?
We
So
might not have
this,
ever found out
yeah,
about it.
this was right in the middle of a campaign for the party positions, and leadership was harvesting delegates
Mhm.
so they could run up the count.
Right. And, a lot of people have said, that's how it's done in some counties. Okay, so let's say for the sake of conversation that the rules are broken regularly throughout the counties and that is supposed to be okay because that's just how it's done is a term I'm learning from from these Republicans saying, "Oh, well that's just how it's done." And I'm saying, "Well, that's not what it says in the rules." But anyway, let's just say that's how it's done and that you can just continuously sign up delegates after reorg and makeup. That was not something that was publicly said. It's not like a post or an email went out immediately after makeup and said, "Hey, if you still want to sign up as a delegate, contact us and we'll get it going." Is we found out that they had just been
We know
secretly
what
cherry
happened
picking.
actually. They ordered way too much barbecue and they wanted to feed everybody as much barbecue as possible. So they had to cheat and do secretive, outreach. They only wanted the
Mm,
people that would actually eat the barbecue because not everybody wanted to go see the people that were at the Unity barbecue. So they had to get more of their own people to eat the barbecue, right?
yeah. What I learned at the special called convention was that barbecue seemed to be the most important subject on the table by far.
Yeah, well, I think what needs to happen, I mean, it's known as Lindsey Graham's Unity Barbecue, right? Wasn't he the guy behind it?
Was it Lindsay?
Well,
I don't
I
know.
mean, I think it was the
Just
party as a whole, but
party. Okay.
Lindsay's significant finances, campaign finances, and contributions, and all of that kind of control what the state party does. So you know that Lindsey Graham is one of the most prolific fundraisers in the United States, and
Well, war
his
sells, right? War makes big money.
correct, and pharmaceutical companies and all of that. So he spends an awful lot of money on that party. In some cases, there have been congressional races that he put all his resources into. So when you do that, you're going to be able to control an awful lot of what goes on in the party. And you'll notice at the state conventions too, is usually Lindsey Graham will have a whole ballroom for himself.
With food, with lots of food, right? Yeah. Breakfast with Lindsay, right? That's funny. Well, I mean, Lindsey Graham is super pro-life, right? So it must have been easy to pass the most pro-life resolution ever, introduced at the GOP convention. It must have been easy to pass that, right?
But you're forgetting there was still barbecue to be gotten to. So we couldn't talk about pro life. We can't vote for it.
Let's not muddy the waters with saving innocent lives here. We got to get to those tea times.
Golf is so important after the barbecue. You can't slow people down before they do those things. I think Justin
Go
Alexander.
ahead.
He in my opinion, he's a patriotic hero for what he did. He knew that the body of Republicans there were mostly against him when he introduced the resolution to be added on to the resolution that the party was trying to pass. The one that would get him more power. And so when Justin, introduced the Equal Protection Amendment, I thought that was really gutsy. Can you explain what happened with that?
Okay. Well, I was up at the mic for most of the day, or pretty much the whole day. And so what happened was they did this closed primary rule change. There were rules A and B, and then there was a rule C that Justin entered a motion for an amendment to add this rule to it. And it was that candidates must sign on, and to be a Republican candidate in a primary, they must sign on to say that yes, they are unequivocally pro-life for equal protection and the abolition of abortion. In this case, and then subsequently in my amendment, what happened is really there were an awful lot of rude people sitting up front opposing it. And once again, people said they were yelled out openly that they wanted to get past this convention to be able to eat.
I think the progressive people at the front of the room and the conservative people at the back, the progressive counties are at the front, right? And the more conservative
Yes.
counties are in the back. So, yeah,
Yes, but they say that is
yeah.
not on purpose.
What I saw from the video. I mean, this is the most serious issue in politics is guarding life at conception, right? And so most oftentimes the Republican Party gives lip service to being pro-life, but it really is not pro-life. In fact, we've seen with the national GOP, it's basically destroyed any support for guarding life, really.
I think that was very smart of Justin because, it was an uphill battle trying to get the candidate qualifications portion removed. So he just said, all right, well, let's make sure that they're actually qualified to run as a Republican and actually, sign an oath that they're going to protect the most basic, fundamental part of our platform, which is the right to life. And the way I look at it is you could have voted yes to that to get to your barbecue just as quickly as you could have voted no, but the majority of the room voted no.
We're gonna roll that video just so people can see it real quick.
You have the precise language? Yes, sir. You can hold on to it, but the motion, as Chair understands it, is to add a provision that no person be a candidate of the Republican Party unless they have taken an oath to support the principles of the party, specifically including opposition to abortion. To support abolition of abortion and equal protection under the law. Okay. All right. And he's got that in writing, so I don't have to memorize.
And then the conclusion was we can't really focus on this. We need to go have barbecue. We need to vote on this because barbecue. I'm hungry. I call the question. I think that really I think Lindsey Graham had a microphone or a headset in his ear, and probably secretly was dispatching that to him. Let him know you're hungry and let him know there's barbecue.
Yeah. It's a shame. Such a shame.
Yeah, then you can see there they called the question, which is a procedural maneuver. They ended debate on that
Mhm.
and other amendments just because we could not even have the discussion.
Yeah.
Now, we didn't mention also for the convention, they had standing rules passed and they added a new provision that you had to get 75% of the delegates to amend or split a question. That was also added at the convention.
So the uphill battle delegates already had. Now it's more of an uphill battle to fix things.
Right.
Yes. And of course, no one is going to want to have a discussion about the standing rules because that's just one of those procedural things everyone wants to vote through to get to, voting on our presiding president, to do all the things to get to the vote to go eat barbecue.
Barbecue's so important.
Now, it
Now
was Sheely's Barbecue from Lexington County, so I will say it is good barbecue. We did not
it
make it there.
is, yeah, that's one of the best places to go in South Carolina. Everybody should visit there if they get a chance, right?
To really visit, my favorite is Cane's Barbecue in Florence, or is it Hartsville? Hartsville. Yeah. Cane's
In
Barbecue.
Hartsville, yeah. There's so many good places in South Carolina. That's one of the best parts about living in South Carolina is we still have the family restaurants that cook the original barbecue that are just finger licking good, right? Well, I don't want people watching this to go, well, I'm definitely not going to participate in politics after seeing this. So, what are we going to? What's your conclusion on what needs to be done and what people need to do to mobilize to? We should be about winning. I'm about winning. I know you two are about winning. How are we going to win this?
I think it's imperative that people pay attention. And I know that, with the more articles we're putting out and the more that we're speaking out about these things that we're witnessing, it has emboldened people to come forward with their stories, to give their eyewitness testimonies about what they've seen in their counties. But we're never going to get anywhere if we don't stay focused, if we don't pay attention to what's going on, if we don't ask questions and challenge the leadership that is not answering those questions or, are doing things, breaking rules, etc. If we just continue to just say, oh, well, this is how it's always been done and it's not going to get better, well, then it won't get better. And I still believe that there's enough of us who are truly, we believe in our Republican platform. We believe in following the rules. And we believe in keeping power with the people and not a small group of party leadership. And I think that's a fight worth fighting. And I think we can win and we can overcome, but we just need to be willing to have those hard conversations. We need to be willing to put aside our friendships. I hear this a lot. Oh, well, he's my friend. Well, you need to look at what your friend is doing, how your friend is leading, and ask yourself the hard question: is this someone you're going to blindly support just because he's a nice guy, or he's your friend, or he's my chairman and I have to support him no matter what? We need to be willing to have those uncomfortable conversations. We need to be willing to be disliked because truth is more important than any of that.
And Evan, over the past week, we had a brief hiatus during campaign season because we had stuff to do. But we, since we've resumed and been publishing about this situation, we've had as big growth as we've had since we started.
Yeah.
So there are people with eyes and ears to see and hear, and we're going to be reaching them. But it's going to be up to everybody around the state to get involved and be motivated about it because it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
At the
It
state
is. Yeah,
convention, they can railroad things at county and state conventions because they have the numbers. So we've got to have the grassroots efforts to change that. And this is, just a portion of what we can do to help change our state, move it in the conservative direction we actually believe our state is, but it
Mhm.
needs to be reflected.
Yep.
Yeah, the communists have a plan, and that plan for decades, if not centuries now, has been pressure from above and pressure from below. And what Christians need to do is we need to put pressure on them from everywhere. I know some people saying sometimes, don't participate in the SCGOP anymore, or don't go to the SCGOP convention anymore. I mean, why let these guys off easy? If they're fighting
Right.
us, that means,
Right.
I mean, if they had already won, they wouldn't be fighting us, right?
Exactly.
So we've
If
got
we want
yeah.
actual conservative legislation, if we want our red state to be an actual red state, we have to unclench the chokehold that the SCGOP machine has had on this state for so many years. If we want to be a safe haven for the unborn, we have to get involved. And it's much easier to say, oh, well, just let them, wallow in their own filth and this, that, and the other. Okay, well, just let the darkness overtake the state then. It's up to us.
Yeah, and Christians are not supposed to be pacifists. I mean, it's not
Exactly.
part of any thinking within the Bible or anything that's portrayed that we're supposed to be doing. We're always supposed to be working against evil. This whole
Yes.
idea of pacifism within Christianity is a new thing that's the that Satan's put into the minds of some church leaders that have gotten into the heads of members of churches across the United States. It's not just happened here these United States, it's happened across the world. Even the Bolshevik Revolution, when that happened in Russia, a lot of Christians had become pacifists due to new thinking that was being pushed through some church organizations there. So as Christians, we have to be the shining light, right? And always
Absolutely.
portray the fact that Christ is within us and we're fighting for him and he is the king and we are building his kingdom.
Exactly.
Well, from all of us here at United Patriot Alliance News, thank you for watching. Please make sure to go to UnitedPatriotsAlliance.com and subscribe to our email list. Please also go to scconfidential.com and keep reading. I know they're on Facebook too. You can also follow Preston Baines on Facebook and Sarah Grace Allen on Facebook too. And my favorite breakfast place in South Carolina is Mama Rabbit's. So if you're driving through Lexington or you're staying at a hotel there because you're in Columbia on a Friday or Saturday, go to breakfast at Mama Rabbit's. I took my son there one time after a tennis match, and that morning he just told me, I've never had such a good breakfast in my life, other than Mama's breakfast at home. But of course, right? But you're gonna get a superb breakfast at Mama Rabbit's in Lexington, South Carolina. Anyways, thank you both for joining us. I'm Evan Mulch. I'd like to tell everybody, go Max for Charlie. We should do that in remembrance of him. And I'll see you all next time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.